Step 1, daily game plan. Step 2, session forecasts and trade log. Step 3, post-trade journal review. And step 4, your weekly SR. Having a record of trades taken with stop loss, entry, TP is just not enough. Collecting vague or irrelevant data will not produce the outcomes you want in the market. In this video, I'll be sharing how I journal every position from the very beginning right up until the point of extracting meaningful insights. My name is Samkelo Mfeka. This is a modern day trader. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Let's get into it. Step 1 is the daily game plan. This is done on TradeZilla and is a custom template I've designed, which you can copy and start using immediately if you're also on TradeZilla. And if you want to see a full list of the exact tools I use and how much they cost me per month, then check out this video I did a few months back. The link to that should pop up somewhere on the screen. Think of this as your master plan for the day. This is the first thing, I open before I even look at, any charts. Good morning and good luck. Consistency is the choice you make when you start doing the things you should be doing day in and day out. That phrase, I said so often on this channel in the Daily Nuggets, that just keeps me kind of anchored in, my purpose and intention. It's not something you have to include, but I have in this template. It starts with my pre-market game plan. I look at the high impact news for the day, and then that will obviously help me determine my restricted windows based on, when I can and can't execute trades on the funded account. That just gives me awareness of how or what I need to be mindful of for the trading day. I then kind of break down the dollar index prior to both London and New York session, just to ensure that any dollar or dollar cross pairs, as well as those that have a correlation with the dollar, are almost aligning with how the dollar index is unfolding. Detailed forecast, we'll get to that in a bit because that touches on step 2. But I think the most important part of this template, besides the restricted news windows and all of that, are the session check-ins. These are kind of just mini journals that help confirm what I've got on watch, how price is developing, if anything's deviated from the plan, if anything outside of the market has interrupted me within the session, because I think that gives kind of this good context to how the day played out overall. I've then got a daily recap, which summarizes positions taken, missed, and anything I've learned. And then just my checklist to make sure that I've posted the daily nugget. So again, I think this is important because it takes into account elements outside of the actual position itself that, can or have affected the outcome of a trade, whether that's the high impact news or, like I said, things that have interrupted or distracted me throughout the day. Step 2 is my session forecasts and trade logs. This is done in Notion, and while I've built this off a template I got while I was at Falcon, this looks nothing like, what it originally was, and I think I've truly made it my own. So this is where I now get into the detailed forecast for each position. And obviously, your plan, what you're looking for, but this is what holds you accountable to that. And I've broken down the structure of this based on the structure of my actual trading plan, which starts with, my bias analysis. I'm ticking off the various steps in my plan that I'm looking for to make sure that the trade or setup on watch matches up with the plan. So bias analysis, and then that moves on to the trade parameters. And that's usually, that will change potentially on a session by session basis, or day by day basis, but not normally. And then those two components are what I'll really fill in before a trade is taken. At the point of execution, which is the second part of this journal, because once I've done, the bias analysis and the trade parameters, then I'll come down and I'll just put in screenshots for those forecasts. and then, a bit of commentary on what I'm looking at from those various elements, mainly on the 15-minute, because the 4-hour and 1 hour speak to, these two sections. And then that's all I do heading into a session. If for whatever reason a trade is executed on, then I come into the entry confirmation section, which again just ticks off the steps in my the steps in my plan that need to be taken or followed, just so that I have record that the trade actually met the plan. And so, that looks into, the micro time frame confirmation and the entry criteria, whether the risk to reward is adequate, and then just re-highlights that I'm not taking a position within a certain news window. Touches on risk, and then I log any, psychological observations or potential mistakes taken, which is what I'll use in my post-trade journal. But I'm logging it now so that when I'm doing my post-trade journal, I don't have to think back to, what was I, did I FOMO at the time, or was it an early entry, late entry? I think this helps me track that in real time, even if some of the information will only be used at a later stage. When I do execute on the position, I'm then logging, the daily, the 4-hour, the 1 hour, 15 minutes, and then the micro time frame as well. And then I also look at how the position closed out. This is normally revisited before step 3, just so that I can remember why I executed on a certain position, which helps me guide the actual post-trade journal itself. So step 3 is the post-trade journal. This is also done in TradeZilla. And if you haven't watched the nuggets from, this week when this review is posted on YouTube, make sure you check them out, because I break down certain elements of this quite nicely. And so this is quite nice because it shows you, the whole chart setup, as well as then, your entry, exit, all the things you would normally manually input in what you think of when you think of like a basic trade journal. This kind of links, it links to my MetaTrader, and it does that for me already. So all that surface level journaling is already done, which allows me to then focus on the more detailed aspects of the process. And some of you are thinking, but then Sam, why are you capturing, charts on your Notion journal if your TradeZilla journal shows you all of that anyway? I think the Notion journal is important because that also captures your thought process before taking a trade and what you were actually looking for, because then this part of the journal allows you to observe how that played out in relation to it. I think the tag elements of it are probably the most important, because this allows you to then view custom reports from that TradeZilla produces for you, where you can, combine any number of these tags to then identify relationships between this, the particular outcomes. And I'm logging psychology and mistakes, which align with that section of my Notion journal outcome, whether it's, full profit, full loss, break even, partial loss or profit, execution type, micro time frame confirmation, risk rating, whether it was low or high, EPD zone, which is basically just the pullback and the depth of that using the fib retracement tool, and then quality. And again, the nuggets go into a bit more detail around how to then start extracting insights from that, but it's an important part of the process. What I didn't discuss in the nuggets was the manual element of this journal, which I've also refined quite a lot from what it originally was. So at the moment, I only ask myself 4 questions, which will be reviewed over time in line with my ASR template, which we'll get to in a bit. First is whether I take the trade again. If so, would I change anything? If not, why? And in this case, I said yes, and I'd be open to a risk entry because it was a low risk, high quality position. So with those, you can be open to more aggressive executions. It looks at, why the trade was lost. Was it because of poor execution? Was the bias incorrect? And, in this case, it was a profitable position, so it's not applicable. I'm then also looking at which parts of my plan or my system that I didn't respect. And in this case, the trade management aspect of that wasn't fully followed. I guess for all the reasons listed below. Were there any mistakes or inefficiencies as a result of psychology? If so, why? And then that obviously dives a bit deeper into any of the tags that you've put here, because that's going to give you awareness as well into, okay, you've got FOMO. How did that translate into, the actual trade outcome? Or, did you force position? Why? It just allows you to start connecting some of those dots. And so the manual trade element of it, I don't think should be too extensive, because that uses a lot of discretion, and you want to keep this part of the journal as mechanical as possible so that the outcomes you get from it are as objective as they can be. Finally, the weekly ASR. So the advanced self-review is where I track important information that will be analyzed on a much longer term basis. And I guess this is where you start to notice patterns for example, if I notice that each month, 60 to 70% of my losses are motion driven, this gives me a key idea of where I need to focus my attention, to begin correcting certain behavior. Or if I'm noting that, there's a particular part of my system that I'm not executing well, which you'll draw those insights from your post-trade journal, then again, I just know where to improve. So this is where I log all of that, and this is reviewed on a weekly, but I think the information becomes more meaningful and important on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. Each part of the entire process builds on top of each other and is connected in a way that allows you not only to explain trade outcomes, but your own behavior as well. Trading is a game of probabilities, but make no mistake, the market is not random. There would be no logical reason to risk capital if it was. This means that how price unfolds can be explained. Each trade you take is a piece of information that helps you decode the market. So make sure you start implementing this 4-step process, because your profitability as a trader in the long run literally depends on it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and as a commitment to your future self, comment right now how many steps of this 4-step process you actually implement at the moment. This will give you perspective on where the gaps are and what to start working on. Remember guys, consistency is the choice you make when you start doing the things you know you should be doing day in and day out.